It's just, you've arrived at a point in Western history in which, and it's no coincidence that this is also the time the birth of modern science was being made possible by the mechanical philosophy. Now, if those of you who don't know what that means, I mean, in the vaguest, most general sense, it just means that rather than in the old Aristotelian, or the classical, or the Christian medieval sense, thinking in terms of various kinds of causality, a final cause the end towards which anything develops, a formal cause the form that impresses itself, material and efficient. Everything has been just reduced to the idea of an efficient cause. I mean, all of reality is understood principally in terms of that efficient force, that power, that force that makes things happen. And within this environment, the only way you can plausibly say God is omnipotent is to say that he acts as an absolutely overwhelming, irresistible, efficient force that guides, that determines everything that happens. Moreover, and this is the important thing in this tradition, the Banyasians were also fiercely insistent that God could have created any world he wanted. There's no reason he created this world rather than another, because there are an infinite number of possible worlds. All of them would be infinitely inferior to God, so there's no best of all possible worlds. And he has from eternity determined and forced to come about through the use of this promotio physica, the salvation of a few and the damnation of most, not on the basis of anything inherent in the creature, right? It's ante-praevisa merita. It's before any foreknowledge he might have of the character or actions of the creature. He has determined this from eternity solely that his sovereignty might be displayed, that his power, he doesn't use the term, Banyas doesn't say sovereignty, he says goodness. And that goodness needs to be displayed both in the mercy of an unmerited redemption and in the eternal ferocity of a fully merited damnation. And you need these orders of damnation and salvation for the full glorious spectacle of God's power to be visible. And, I mean, this is happening in Catholic theology. It's also in Protestant theology. I mean, I don't need to tell you, I would think that similar language is to be found in the Calvinist tradition without the promotio physica, but, and in Lutheran tradition. This is the modern Christian God in the West to a very real degree, not for everyone. It's also the God that people have now heard about because of the printing press. Throughout most of history, in the West as in the East, Christians have been semi-Pelagians. That is, they believe that everything comes from God, but they have to do good works to be saved. I mean, this is what most Christians have believed down the ages. There was no printing press. Most medieval Christians, most ancient Christians were largely, especially medieval Christians, because the theological preaching was iffy in most of throughout most of its history, apparently, from what we can deduce. In the age of the printing press, this God, the God who seems first and foremost to be a God of sovereign will, a God who fits very well into the age of the mechanical philosophy. This God gives us a model of what freedom is. And what freedom is the spontaneous power of the will to decide and to do and to act. And if that's what freedom is for God, then in some sense that's what freedom must be for us. It's a natural process that over the years this image of divine freedom will migrate to the human and become an image of human freedom. What is it to be free? It is the freedom of sheer sovereignty. The sovereignty of the nation state, the sovereignty of the individual, the sovereignty of the property owner, what have you. Sovereignty. Power of the will. Not obedience to one's nature, not desire for the good, but first and foremost, the unpremised, spontaneous employment of the power of the will. And if that's what freedom is, then God is the ultimate rival to our freedom. God, rather than being the infinite source of the good that sets us free, as he would be in the more antique notion of freedom, God, rather than God being that eternal good that sets us free for itself, that gives us a nature and sets us free from our own ignorance and vice and cruelty and violence, God is now just the biggest individual around. and he is our enemy. But not only does he give us the model of freedom, he is, and I think, just forgive me for putting this so bluntly, he also happens to be evil. Because if that's how predestination works, if it is this causal force directly determining all things for the display of sovereignty, then he's a God beyond good and evil. He is a God totally beyond good and evil, and to be beyond good and evil is simply to be evil. And over the course of time, why should one continue to believe in such a God? Such a God should die. The death of God, the slow retreat of faith, seems to me almost a thing desirable by contrast.